Welcome, 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 everyone. We had some chance to get everyone to join, get comfortable, grab a snack. I am going to go ahead and just go over the agenda for today so that you all can know what your time is looking like. Next slide, please. Okay, so for today, we're going to go through our welcome. We'll have special greetings followed. Then I will go over the overview and mission statement. We'll talk more a little bit about our Conversations for Black Women initiative. Then we have some data that we also want to go over from Black-led and Black-focused organizations that we surveyed. Then we'll get into the meat of the event, which is the panel discussion. We'll then have some Q&A time again, some time for Q&A at the end, and we'll go over next steps and then closing remarks. Next slide, please. So without further ado, I am going to bring our very own president and CEO of the California Black Women's Collective Empowerment Institute, Kelly Todd Griffin, to bring us welcome.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you everyone for coming in today for this very important conversation for such a time as this. I think this is a wonderful panel that we have, and I'm really excited today because just a little background about kind of how the Empowerment Institute got here, which is what makes it very exciting to have special greetings coming from the Honorable Mayor-elect, Oakland Mayor-elect Barbara Lee. We started this journey actually in 2018, and one of our panelists was part of this when we decided we wanted to do a State of Black Women in California um, uh, report and looking at the quality of life indexes on Black women and how they compare to their female counterparts, and a conference in Sacramento. And we had that conference at Sierra Health in Sacramento, and Sierra Health actually underwrote the work. And so we were able to start this work and this journey. And then so we continued to do the work in a couple of years passed. And Kendra Lewis, who will be joining us today on the panel, was part of our kind of our thought leadership around the direction of this. And we got a call. I got a call from then Congresswoman Karen Bass. And there was a opportunity. This was in 2020. There was an opportunity, a potential opportunity for the collect for a appointment to the Senate seat. And with that appointment, both our Honorable Karen Bass and Honorable Barbara Lee was interested in a seat, and we started convening around this notion that Black women in California can come together and offer not just one but two phenomenal candidates for this appointment. And every time we called, they answered. Every time, and more so, Barbara Lee was so available, and we partnered with our sisters, Black Women Organized for Political Action, as well. And we just kept meeting and kept meeting and kept meeting. And then next thing unfortunately, we didn't get that appointment, but we then decided, and Kendra was part of the strategy team, that we need to keep this going, and that is, and let's do another report. And so we did another report and recognized that the quality of life indexes did not improve and actually got worse. And so therefore we needed this think tank, this Empowerment Institute that was going to be able to stay focused on the mission, and not just the mission of building the bench, but the mission of also capturing the insights and experiences of Black women and girls in California, including those who were elected officials. And today we're so honored that those two phenomenal congresswomen have grown into being really kind of our mentors as we do this work. But they've also both now have come back home and they both now are mayors. And one, Barbara, just secured her seat as the Oakland mayor-elect, and Karen Bass is the Los Angeles mayor. And the fact is that politics is local, and this is what we need for such a time as this, as we are battling the battles of inequities in our communities. And so I am always honored to introduce Honorable Mayor elect Barbara Lee, because I know Barbara Lee at all times speaks for me, and she will continue to do that in her new role. And so we're very excited to have her on today to bring us greetings for this very, very important conversation. And so, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our Shiro, our person that is our North Star and our beacon, particularly for the work that we do in California, and particularly for Black women in California, the Honorable Barbara Lee.
God, Kelly, well, let me just say, God, thank you so much, Kelly, Kendra, all my sisters here, Regina, everybody who, you all, and this is my very first meeting with Black women since my election. So this is really an honor and an inspiration. And a couple of lessons that we all have learned: persistence, perseverance. You know, Mayor Bass could have said the heck up with it after the Senate deal. I could have said the heck with it after my Senate deal. But we said, no, we got to stay on the case. And I know so many Black women after what took place with Kamala, our VP, felt like, forget it. And so I just want to thank you all for staying the course, because Mayor Bass and myself are the epitome of, no, we can't forget it. We have got to keep, as hard as this is. And let me tell you, this was a hard campaign. As difficult as it is, Black women, I keep reminding us of Dr. Maya Angelou and Still We Rise. And so we have to remember that. And that's what you all remind me of. And so I just want to thank you for staying with it. And we've got to, now is the time for Black women. It's such a time as this, because who has the clarity and the history and the cachet and what is needed, not only for our communities, but for this whole country and the world. We're the ones, and I am telling you, here in Oakland, there are billionaires and oligarchs that want to buy this city. And nobody could have beat them like I beat them. And I hate to say that, but it was because of the experience, and it was because of you all. It was because how Black women circled the wagons. It was because how we ran this campaign. They still can't figure out how we did this. And I'm gonna tell you, because we saw people who had never registered to vote, formerly incarcerated individuals. They came out like you would not believe. They registered. They didn't even know they could vote. We registered. Homeless people, unsheltered people, their addresses. Okay, we got them. And so we won. At least there are about 300 more votes to count, but we won by a margin of 5,000 votes. Didn't even go into rank order voting because we got over 50%, but given rank order, we're at 53%. Now, I share that because this was a really tough race. And it's because of the money, the dark money. One of the persons, $280,000, former partner of Elon Musk, playing here in politics in Oakland. You know, so this is like this is like a diamond in the rough for people with the money. And so standing in the gap was one thing we had to do, but also a vision for how we move forward together and how we meet the challenges and not sweep them under the rug. Because it's tough times for myself and for Mayor Bass. But we know that we have to work together with everybody to move us forward. So I'm just saying, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be here. You all keep at it. You inspire me. Anything I can do to make sure we continue with this, because the other lesson that I hope Black women understood and learned through this is that when the Senate deal came up, Karen and myself, we said, we're not going to run against each other. We're going to be supportive of whoever the governor appoints, if he does make the appointment. And that's how we did this. And so that's another example of had we started competing and had you all started, you know, the divisions occur and all that stuff, well, both of us never could have done what we've done so far. And so, out of the ashes we rise, and the phoenix rise again. And so thank you all again so much. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. But it's crazy transition time. Whew, it's a lot.
Well, ooh, hi. Well, thank you so much, Honorable Barbara Lee, for joining us and bringing special greetings. We really do appreciate it, and congratulations again on your major achievement. We appreciate you and all the work that you're doing for our community.
Thanks so much. And when we have our inauguration, we'll definitely let you know, because I would love everybody to be here. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
It'll be so great. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. God bless.
God
You
bless.
too.
Hey, Holly. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Nice being with you, and take care.
You too. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so I am going to give you all, and just because I realize I have not introduced myself, this slide helped me. My name is Karina Crump. I am a senior program manager with the collective, and it is my pleasure to be here to present this information to you and to have this dialogue with the amazing panel that we have going. Next slide, please. All right, our focus. So at the California Black Women's Collective Empowerment Institute, we are a leading 501c3 nonprofit. We're committed to advancing the lives of Black women and girls across the state. Our mission is rooted in driving social and economic mobility, ensuring that Black women and girls not only survive, but that they also thrive. The heart of our work is data collection, policy change, and practice transformation. This is our guide to our approach with dismantling systematic barriers and building solutions that are rooted in the lives and experiences of Black women and girls. We do have a Black women's think tank, which is housed with our academic partner, California State University Dominguez Hills. It is one of the first kinds focused solely on understanding how Black women and girls experience life in California. We do that through the lens of gender, race, and geography. We produce groundbreaking research that highlights disparities and reveals untapped opportunities for transformation. The data clearly shows that to close disparity gaps, we must create intentional pathways to opportunity, and that work truly goes beyond research. Next slide, please. Our impact. So since 2022, we have achieved some significant milestones that includes training 500 and almost 600 middle school and high school girls on financial planning and leadership. We also have distributed more than 2,500 backpacks. We've granted over 100,000 to organizations throughout California, focused on impacting Black women and girls. We've also trained over 1,400 Black women on leadership, economic mobility, and advocacy. We have honored amazing total of 179 Black women trailblazers. We've also produced over 30 events highlighting the beauty and brilliance of Black women and girls. And we've also convened and engaged in more than 25,000 Black women daily. So one of our major initiatives is Conversations for Black Women. Today, the reason why we're here today. Next slide, please. Conversations for Black Women, it includes informative, resource-rich events and activities that are designed to reset conversation around issues important to Black women. This initiative includes bringing together subject matter experts, policymakers, business leaders, activists, labor, and community leaders to have a robust conversation on what needs to be done to help Black women, their families, and their communities. We do this to address disparity gaps, develop policy change, and drive practice transformation. Next slide, please. Telling the story. Okay, next slide, please. So we completed a survey. We conducted a survey for Black-led and Black-focused nonprofit leaders throughout the state to capture insight on how federal funding is impacting their organization and its work. We conducted this survey from April 8th to April 21st. It was a statewide focus. And we used email and social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram for this platform. Organizational, oh, thank you. And so we did receive feedback from 18 organizations. Next slide, please. From that, no, back one, please. Back one more. Okay. We'll go, there we go. Team size, 60% have been between 1 to 5 employees. 55% of both are both Black-led and Black-focused. The budget size, 35% of them operate with annual budgets over 1 million. Primary focus areas included human services, social services, education, civil rights advocacy, community development, economic mobility, and youth development. What the regional representation looks like is, of that, 66.7 were Southern California, 5.6% were from Central California, 22.2% were in Northern California, and we had 5.6% out of state by way of Nevada. Most of them have been in operation for over 20 years. Next slide, please. The federal funding impact. For the current federal funding status, 80% of organizations receive federal funding of some sort. 20% of those do not receive any federal funding. Among those with the federal funding, 45% experience a reduction due to recent federal budget cuts. 22% report increased pressure on remaining funds. Just taking a further look at the operational and programmatic impact, 33% report difficulty recovering from operational expenses, staff salaries, and an increased reliance on emergency reserve. 45% have had to delay or cancel programs, unfortunately. 72% say federal cuts have impacted their ability to serve their targeted populations. 17% report a significant or very significant impact. And then 61% fear future declines in federal funding availability. Next slide, please. Under the service and staffing reductions, 40% will reduce the availability of direct services. Of those, 44% cite community programs or services as well have been affected, most affected. Staffing impacts, 37% have already or plan to reduce staff or cut hours. 56% report cuts in outreach staff, while 44% report cuts in program staff. And just looking at the sustainability concerns, 54% expressed concern about their long-term sustainability if federal cuts do continue. That is, again, we pulled that data from 18 organizations across the state. We will have that information available and can share post-event materials if you have any questions about that. But without further ado, I think we are excited to get to the panel discussion. And if we go to next slide, please, that would be moderated by Ms. Regina Wilson, who is, you can go back one, please, who is the Executive Director of California Black Media.
You ready for me, Karina?
Yes, you can come on.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone who's here to join us today for this robust conversation. So I hope that you guys are ready. You've got your water, you have the things that you need. But I'm Regina Brown Wilson. I'm the Executive Director of California Black Media. As you see on the screen, I've done a lot of other things as well, but most of it really revolves around leadership, leading our Black media, but our ethnic-owned media, community media, to sustainability. And so I'm involved at various levels of advocacy and making sure that we were counted, whether it was in the census. That's how we knew how much money would come back to our state. So making sure that everyone understood what the census was, and those hard to count, hard to reach populations would respond whenever they got their cards. And that was going to help with our apportionment of resources that come back to us, but also how many people were going to elect us and have our voice heard in Washington. So thank you so much, Karina, for teeing this up for me. And I hope that everybody else is excited as I am to have this discussion. So please help me welcome to the stage an extraordinary panel of visionaries and change makers. Joining us today is Kendra Lewis, Managing Director of the Sierra Health Foundation. Wave, Kendra. Holly Halliday, Esquire, is President of Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote. And do I see Holly? Holly's there, right? There she goes. And then Pastor Raymond Lankford, who is the CEO of Oakland Private Industry Council. And last but not least, Dr. Sharoni Little, founder and CEO of the Strategist Company. You wave. All right. That way everybody knows and can see. I see everybody in the little dots, but in the little squares, making sure they know who's who. But first up, Holly, I think I want to start with you. And, I want to first thank all of you for being here for this urgent and essential conversation. Holly, for many nonprofit leaders, the recent federal budget cuts feels like the ground has shifted beneath their feet. I like to say I feel like I'm still living in a tornado, and it's going around, and I haven't been able to catch my breath or find any firm standing. From your vantage point, what exactly is happening at the federal level, and what should Black-led and Black-focused nonprofits need to understand about the true scope of the impact of these funding freezes?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me for this important conversation. I feel like I have been with California Black Women's Collective Empowerment Institute from the beginning. So it's good to be here with yourself as well as Kelly. I'm going to start with the solution and then tell you why, and then talk about the problem. So the solution is and I want to start with the solution because it's where Mayor-elect Lee left off. We are our own solution. Point blank, period. If you are not part of something, if you are not part of some collective, if you are not empowering people and organizations like the California Black Women's Collective Institute Empowerment Institute, you're not doing it right. Because the only way these organizations, and let's face it, us as Black women, get through this is together. I think that's why you're starting to see an uptick in the number of folks who are trying to band together, come together, and think about the collective. Don't believe the headlines that Black women are just asleep somewhere getting mani-pedis. We are doing that too, because we deserve it. But we are moving very strategically and on purpose. Here's what we know. And I have facts to back this up. We are tracking an administration that is demonstratively the most in modern politics, intentionally racist-driven administration that we've seen in some time. There is a Substack that I advise that you follow so that you know I'm not making it up, called Contraband Camp. They have a whole tracking racism database that goes back from the beginning of this administration. And I have to tell you, they are busy over there because it gets updated daily. So understand that this is an intention, not just a byproduct of bad policies. And I think that's something that is different. A lot of what we have seen, especially in the recent past, has been more of a byproduct than an intentional assault. I also want to state that the intentional assault is not just to disempower us because we are one of the strongest collective demographics in the country, not because we have better numbers, but because we move collectively. And it's that collective that they're seeking to break up. They want to separate us from Black men. They want to separate us from other parts of our community to whom we have greater in common than differences by choosing and picking and pulling at the threads of discord to encourage us to lean into differences instead of commonalities and to encourage us to believe the American lie that individualism is what makes us great. It is not true. So I would say just be aware of those things. Financially, what it has meant is we see foundations reorganizing, reimagining, revisioning, all of which has resulted in, at best, slower grants coming out, at worst, no grants coming out. And then the federal government has really led the way by just simply cutting off grants, even grants that have been midstream. And so that gets back to the solution. It means we have to step up and support each other in new and dynamic ways and be more conscientious about how we are not just showing up for the institutions, but frankly, writing checks for them too, because this is what's going to hold us together.
And, and I just wanted, because I didn't want to leave anybody out. I know that we have a large audience and I want to make sure. So you said, go look at Substack, and the thing that's being updated is contraband camps.
Contraband camp, one single.
Okay.
And the sub post is tracking racism, the Trump administration discrimination database.
Okay, great. Thank you for that resource. Love a good resource. I have my little pen and my little notepad next to me, so I don't just doodle. I'll make sure that we have that for everybody later, anybody who didn't catch that. So, let's move on to you, Miss Kendra Lewis. How are you doing, my friend? Kendra, foundations are being stretched, responding to the moment while preparing for what's next. What courageous concrete steps must foundation boards take now to ensure that they're not simply surviving, but actively sustaining Black-led organizations through this funding turbulence?
Well, thank you. So good to see everyone. I am here, glad to be here, but definitely in the place of our CEO, Chet Hewitt, who is really dynamic vision when it comes to these things. So, one of those things is, in philanthropy, at least the Sierra Health Foundation, the center, even before this administration started, we were committed to our principles and values, and from the top, it was made clear to those of us managers as well as the rest of the team is that we are not going back. Chet was very clear about that. Kying is very clear about that. So we as a team understand that, and those are the values that we are 10 toes in throughout the work that we do. I would say that, and this is one of the things I really like about the Sierra Health Foundation, especially with Chet, is we're bogged down in strategic plans. We tend to have a different way of thinking. And so I think that's one of the things is philanthropy will go to a strategic plan that they spend 5 years to do, that then they try to execute 10 years. And by the time it's executed, the world has changed. And that is just that's not how we roll. So, I think right now is the time to really look at the moment for what it is, and listen to the grant partners to hear what's on the ground. And that's what we do. We don't tell our grantees what we want. We ask them what they want, and we work in that way. So I think in this moment, folks are scared. No, there was no anticipation of this in many places, and some were ready. And I think, it is, there's a lot of conversations that are being had at that very high level, CEOs and presidents. But folks are very skittish. And I think, the boldness, and I think we just kind of start talking about it, but the thing like Harvard, it is going to take philanthropy is going to have to lean in the same way at some point. I think they're just trying to really figure out, because all states are different, and and as we know in California, our regions we're really divided philanthropically on regions, and so every we all come together, but we all have very specific strategies in our geographic areas. So and it's day to day right now.
Like you're in the same tornado with me.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't alone. I wanted
It
to make
is.
sure I wasn't alone.
Yep, it's a vortex, that's for sure.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel not good, but comfortable that I'm not alone. So, but thank you so much, Kendra, for that. And so, let's round on over to Dr. Little. Dr. Little, DEI has long served as a powerful tool to address discriminatory practices in workplaces and beyond. But today, we're seeing it used as a wedge, isolating organizations that once were celebrated for their equity-centered missions. From your vantage point, what is the federal government getting right? And where is it falling short in protecting or advancing DEI principles? And maybe we
Thank you
just
so much, Regina, for that question. And again, to the California Black Women's Collective for putting this very important conversation together. And when I think about those two ends of the continuum about right or wrong, I first go back to history. And this is very important. There's a saying that history doesn't repeat itself. Human beings repeat history. And as Black women, as we navigate this vortex, as we navigate these tornadoes, we have to stand strong on our history and what was the impetus for DEI. And so when we think about the legal and the legislative responses to hundreds of years of discrimination, there were always attacks on our community, redlining from the medical profession, education. This is nothing new in higher education with attacks. We've had to advocate. I've been in the corporate space, I've been in higher education. And so when we think about PWIs or the funding dearth to HBCUs, that's not accidental. That's very intentional. It's systemic. And when we think about who is going to be the solution, as Holly said, it has always been us. And that's what I think we have to remind ourselves, because sometimes when we do get a little bit more resources, we sometimes forget about that collectivism. And because we can live in different places where we should, and we can go different places, we should never forget how Black Wall Street was constructed. It was because legally, we could not go beyond certain neighborhoods. So you had the grocery store owner, you had the collegiate and high school educators, you had all of the business owners all within the same community. So not only did we keep our money in those places, but we also modeled for generations that this leadership and the ability to take care of ourselves is not an anomaly. And so we know even the creation of nonprofits, it was to be responsive to those who have been historically underserved, whether it was churches. And now we see, again, the strategy of saying that they're going to pull Harvard's tax exempt status, because it's saying that whatever mechanism that you think will be your solution, we're going to attack. And so unfortunately, I can't say that there's much good going on, but what I can say is that being obvious is allowing us to be intentional and strategic, because we don't have to read between the lines. It's blatant. But if we go back to our Black women's clubs, if we look at Ida B. Wells Barnett, who owned her own newspaper and then brought her money to fight against anti-lynching, we have models. Mary McLeod Bethune for education. So in the one sense, it's definitely challenging. And as was mentioned, not everybody was anticipatory about that we can even get to this point. But for me, the greatest learning is that we have a legacy, not only of working together, but we have a $1.8 trillion spending power in our community. And so we may have to make some difficult decisions about where we're spending our money. But there are real solutions where we don't have to go looking to the left or to the right. We can look at one another and work together.
Well, I love that. That sounds like that TikTok video everybody's
Right.
talking about, where we don't have to spend more money on designer purses. They already told you the hack. Dr. Lanford, how are you today?
Wonderful. How are
Okay.
you doing today?
Great, I can hear you now. So, Pastor Langford, when lifelines are threatened, panic is easy, but strategy is vital. In the face of funding cuts, what does it mean for nonprofits to lead not from fear, but with focus? And what does a strategic response truly look like on the ground?
Right. Thank you, Ms. Wilson, and to all my lovely sisters that I'm so fortunate to participate on this panel with. Ms. Lewis, tell my dear friend Chet Hewitt I miss him today. I was looking forward to seeing him. And it's interesting that Chet is a part of this panel as well as Congresswoman Barbara Lee, because my career started with both of them probably 30 years ago. And to see that, I'm still connected with their work, I'm honored and I'm thankful. And with the mayor-elect Barbara Lee, it was our agency, the Oakland Private Industry Council, that used our reentry staff. They wanted to see her elected as the mayor of Oakland. And I tried to be political and say, we can't get involved with elections, but we can support people. And if we do it from an educational perspective, then of course you want to support Miss Lee, but also too, you want to support Lauren Taylor, right? But those brothers and sisters, they were intent on getting Miss Lee elected, and they brought to the table a well-known African-American leader who made a donation to support their Oakland Peace movement. And I'm telling you, they pulled together formerly incarcerated men and women with lived services throughout Oakland, and they registered them to vote. They did a rally and a march, and at the end of the rally and the march, there was literally people that had over 1,000 years of prison experience and livelihood that were now free and that now could vote. And they then took it to the church. They brought the churches to the table. And we prayed, though. In matters like this, we have to not forget our faith of praying, right? The Black community comes from a very prayerful background. That's a part of our strategy, right? Someone said, hold our peace and he'll fight our battles. And so we prayed, and we have to pray. We have to pray. We have to be peaceful, and we have to believe in that what we're involved with, right? We just have to believe in it. And so that's a part of the strategy, because I have brought people in to say, how can you help the Oakland Private Industry Council? We've been around for 43 years, and many of you know Gay Cobb, extraordinary woman that's a trailblazer that's helped to start this great agency. But we have been a recipient of federal funds for 43 years. And so now how do we transform ourselves, right? What's our strategy? What's our plan? And our plan is that there are many men and women in our community who still can give back, like this one brother did. He wanted to help. He wanted to give back. And this brother is a multimillionaire. This brother spent literally hours with at our what we call our shoulder-to-shoulder table, which is our formerly incarcerated brothers. He spent hours with our youth. We have a group of youth that we have been working with that were robbing and stealing from stores and things like that. And we built a relationship with them, and now they started their own car business. They're doing community cleanup, and they're making money legally, right? So we have to understand that we may not always receive the $1 million grants that we are eligible for, right, and should be awarded. But we have millions of dollars in other assets that are also funding assets to support our work. I really like what the Black Women Collective is doing, collecting data. Data is powerful. Information is powerful. I mean, we were just at our 7 Last Words, sponsored by Bishop Bob Jackson in Oakland last Friday. And I'm telling you, if those preachers didn't use some data and some information, right? I was shouting and I wasn't even on the podium to preach, right? So, but that's people get excited when we share information, when we share our knowledge, right? And people will come forth and give. And I think this is a good time for us to learn that, you know, we don't need the federal government as much as the federal government need Black people. The federal, and that's the message. The federal government needs Black people. A lot of people that are coming into America don't have the commitment, don't have the dedication, nor the care or concern to America. Black people have a care and concern to Americans and anybody that comes into America to become a citizen, right? So the strategy is for us to stay focused in our faith and our belief. Also, one thing that Congresswoman Barbara Lee did during this mayoral election, she got out and got amongst the people. We have to get amongst the people. We have to visit the churches, right? Talk to the pastors, encourage the pastors, right? Let them know that they have a role to play. Other civic minded organizations, be amongst the people. And I'm telling you, Miss Lee was amongst the people. That is really, really important. I'll share this story and I'll be done. Kendra, you'll like this. But when Chet Hewitt worked with the County of Alameda Social Services Agency, we had over 4,000 children that were lingering in the foster care system. And Mr. Hewitt said, I want to get these children to their families. I want a diversity in the foster care and adoption process here. And he came to me, he said, Reverend, what are we gonna do? I said, we're gonna take it to the church. We went to the churches, and I'm telling you, Mr. Hewitt engaged the churches, and we put together a program, and that program went from over 4,000 kids in care to less than 1,200 kids in foster care in Alameda County. We worked our way out of a federal multi-million-dollar contract because our children were in homes, and if they didn't have homes, we had Black and brown foster and adoptive homes for them to be placed with. So the strategy is there. We got to stick with it, stick with the plan that we God has given us, and we got to work with people, right? Everybody. I work with everybody. If you have breath in your body, I'm working with you. Hello, somebody, right? So we got to work together with the people to get the job done. And I'm so honored to be here with you sisters today.
Well,
see how excited I've gotten?
I know I think you're making the tornado calm. Like I feel a little calm. I feel calmer with all the comments that everybody's made. It's making me feel calmer. Or maybe I just have different glasses on and I'm not seeing all the chaos. But and since you mentioned Kendra, I'll come back to Kendra because Kendra, as we're talking about faith and we're looking at what Pastor Langford said, and it was such great examples that you provided us. But Kendra, beyond grant dollars, there's care, there's trust, there's long-term commitment. How can funders reimagine their role as a partner in resilience and embed care and responsibility into every aspect of the grant making process?
Thank you for that question. I'll say this, Chet does have some moments where he's a lightweight pastor. We have quite a few meetings. I'm like, some lightweight pastoring going on. That was a little sermon. And it's great. One of the things that I have the privilege of doing, and it's one of the reasons that I was really attracted to this position, is the work that we do around not just the grant making, but the technical assistance and power building. And so the initiative that I work on specifically is around grant making for capacity building, and it is not dictated to, yet again, it is the grantees determine what they want, what they need. And our guidelines are pretty simple in community economic development, which is the portfolio that I have. We have a technical assistance team that is incredible. Dr. Manuel Pastor, Chris Benner at UC Santa Cruz. that really is doing hands-on work, and that really is, and they do more one-on-one. So it's really helping more directly, not just handing off the dollars and letting the community members just figure it out. And then the last but not least, the power building, that is really important, because what I would say the vision of this work is realizing that policy advocacy and activism is really important. And if you don't have some of those resources, a grant isn't enough. And then the other component about that is and I think this is, you have to ask for what you want. And as somebody who worked in, Regina and Kelly all know, many of you on this call, I've been working in nonprofit sector for over 25 years. And one of the things that I really, hope in my legacy work is really transforming how, we have to interact in it, but, also we have to look for ways to be a little bit free from philanthropic money and public dollars, but really changing the application period. Like our application was simple. It probably could take someone an hour or two. Our reporting is simple. Just so like, asking, or if not demanding, philanthropy to change the way in which we have to operate. Having to do a grant that takes, hiring somebody that, that you have to pay $150 an hour, and then, 25, 30, 40 hours plus. So just, really streamlining the process, removing barriers, as we're in these moments. People don't have the time more than anything, on the energy. So if, looking at just the process to help alleviate a lot of that. And I would say, just looking at the statistics, when you have an organization that has 1 to 5 people, they're all hands on deck. And so, you really need to, you need other resources. And so I think that'd be really important. Money is good. It is important. But these other resources that philanthropy has access to, is important in this moment. And I will say, as a matter of fact, tomorrow, Wednesday, is our Equity on the Mall, and we have probably 1,500 people coming up to Sacramento, 22 buses bringing folks, mostly from the Valley, but some of my partners are coming from other parts of the state. And the importance of this now is really convening, I think, in the challenge of the vortex and the tornado, really looking outside of the box. And sometimes, California, although it has an appearance as the bastion of progressive freedom, we know as Black folks, especially in the nonprofit sector, it can be we can be as debilitated as our brothers and sisters in Alabama and Mississippi. It is very hard doing this work in California. And getting dollars and resources, and not, being told, we're only a certain percentage of the state, when we know we are the margin of victory almost every single time. So I'll stop there before I get too far.
Well, no, this is great. This has been great conversation. And Dr. Little, as she talks about that, and she talks about what that looks like, look, as the political landscape shifts, organizations are being forced to walk a fine line. And how can Black-led and equity-focused nonprofits reshape their narrative and positioning to remain mission-aligned while navigating the evolving legal and political constraints around DEI?
Yeah, I think it's very important on a couple of fronts, just following up on everything that's been said, is that we have to educate ourselves across all of these systems and understand how they navigate. I worked several years with nonprofits where we would put on these camps. And to Kendra's point, yes, making that process of grant writing and grant application much more simplified, but also having our nonprofits understand their why, what they do, and the importance of data to document their outcomes so that they don't get stuck at the mercy of arbitrary requirements. Because we also know that those have been strategies to either give us a small portion of a small budget. And if we look at that parallel in the workforce in corporate America, most of the DEI quote unquote work was from multicultural budgets. It did not come from the overall organizational budget because it was viewed as something tangential, specialty work for specialty folk. And we have to start talking about this work and the essential nature that all business begins and ends with people. And so we can monetize, we can get the data about if it takes $20,000 to hire somebody and you have a revolving door, let's start talking about that. We're not asking for anything. What we're saying is we want to go to a workplace to be productive because we work hard anyway, but we don't want to be trounced upon and have to do it at any cost. And so reframing the narrative, that's another strategy that we're seeing. Owning the media is about owning the narrative. And we have been subjected to these false narratives for hundreds of years. And so we have to have multiple strategies going on at the same time. So how are we empowering our nonprofits? One, to really understand and make a compelling case about the work that they're doing and the impact and the cost savings, because let's not pretend as pastors, we are saving the government a lot of money. And so we have to make that compelling case. In the corporate arena, unfortunately, a lot of companies jumped on the bandwagon with no intention, because at the end of the day, you create a culture. A culture does not create itself. So when we look at how few people of color, Black people, Black women, Black men were in the C-suite, you don't get an all-white leadership team accidentally. So let's back design those processes, but we have to equip ourselves logically and with data to ask those conversations, to ask those questions, and then to have our own compelling response and alternative. And so we really need to think about what was the purpose of DEI? Why is it necessary today? But we see these assaults in higher education. So what is our response? That's why Mary McLeod Bethune and so many others started their own schools. The HBCUs, when they did not want us educated. Okay, so we have our own strategy. And so when we think about whether it be in higher education or corporate, people are going to back up because they were never fully invested. Their why was not authentic. And it was fad. It was, let's jump on the bandwagon. But when you see many of the organizations that are true to it and they're consistent with it, it's throughout their organization, not something that's just hanging on the side or for show.
Well, that's in the words of my mother, who is the former chair of the Commission on Aging. She often liked to say, equity is baked in, not sprinkled on top. So I love the words that you just said right there. And, you know,
Come
how
on, Mama.
bring you back. I know Mama Brown, she's always spitting some stuff out. But Holly, I want to bring you back into this conversation as well. And, you know, advocacy is not optional. We know that. It's survival. In a polarized political climate, how can Black-led organizations lift their voices effectively, maintain strong relationships with key decision makers, and ensure they're not only heard but heeded?
Heeded. I love that. And listen, I appreciate my fellow panelists for doubling down on the data, because the data is important. But you said a very key word, Regina, that I want to hone in on: relationship. We need to decide that, to be colloquial, that these people that we've elected, that we go together now, that we are in a whole relationship with them. That means that we're going to show up. That means that we're going to call them up. That means we're going to email them. That means that we're going to show up for them when it's time to vote. And if they're not showing up for us, that means we're going to be showing up for somebody else. We in a whole relationship now. We go together, boo. And so we have to have that whole mindset in terms of our activism. It's not just something that we do when we have a little extra time. It's something that we have to treat like a part of our extended family. This is no longer going to be your side piece. This got to be your main situation. Otherwise, we are not showing up the way we need to show up. And also recognize the reason that's important is because of our own leadership. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't care, Black woman, where you find her and what her situation is, she leading something. And because of that, we are a trusted messenger group. We are not the only trusted messenger group, but we are an important trusted messenger group. So if we're not in relationship with our elected officials, and frankly, I love what you said, Pastor Langford, with our community, all the data in the world is going to be irrelevant. It's really about deepening our relationships. It's about creating those connections. And here's the truth of the matter. We have more tools than ever to connect with each other, and we need to use them. We need to stop saying, oh, I'm tired of being online, but online may be the only way you can reach certain people. Oh, I don't want to go down to that neighborhood. Drive yourself on down to the neighborhood. Take a walk around and start waving and smiling at people. We go together now, y'all, and we need to act like it.
So she is like, boom, boom. You change the status on your social media accounts. We go together. You taken. Pastor Langford, you could have to laugh at that, but you committed your work to creating a job-ready workforce in every zip code. Amid budget shortfalls and shifting priorities, how do we continue to build meaningful pathways to employment? And what reliance strategies are essential for today's economic landscape?
Good question. And Dr. Holliday, I believe in relationships. They're so important and so meaningful. And to answer that question, Ms. Wilson, we have to continue. Ms. Little said something really important. And oftentimes in my work, there are times when I would just love to go to Montclair and hang out. I don't have to worry about violence, crime, but I got to spend my money to fit in. Let's be real. And they're not really looking for me up there to make an impact or transform their neighborhood or community. They're really interested in me spending my money. Whereas in my neighborhood and community, the people are looking for me to make an impact. The people are looking for me to bring hope and opportunity. The mothers, the families, the community. I tell people all the time, the Black community, we were not raised and reared to get killed and go to prison or jail. We were raised, you had to go to school and you had to go to church and you had to get yourself some type of education and do something for yourself, right? And that is not only the perspective of the Black community, that's perspective of most and all communities, right? But we have to realize just how vitally important it is that we build these relationships. Because if you don't build a relationship, what are you connected with? Who are you connected to? Recently, we just experienced with Mayor-elect Barbara Lee's campaign, we experienced the Trump mega dollars in Oakland. We were able to see the donors, and their voting affiliation. And that's okay. We welcome any voter, but however, we respect Oaklanders. And Oaklanders happen to be a high percentage of African American, Latino persons, right? So what we look at is that how can we empower these young men, young women with jobs and job training, right? But that means we got to build these relationships because it's not going to happen on the first session or the first meeting, right? And we have to continue to go into those neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera. But what we found over the years is that we found coming out of various zip codes, the people that have taken advantage of the job trainings and the opportunities because of the job training, right? That led to job placements. We have now what we're doing to transform ourselves financially. We're partnering with corporations. They still need trained people, right? That they can employ to provide their service or their products. And so that's what we're doing now. We are challenging that mindset of the people in our community. and let them know. Sometimes I tell them, this ain't about the white man. This is about you and me. And do you want a job? I don't want to hear nothing about the white man and the white Jesus. I don't want to hear that, because there's some white money at the table. Do you want a job? Right? And that's the real that's the real conversation we have with them, right? To win our people over, and because they have stints, they're loving, caring people, but sometimes if there's no hope, you can give up so fast, right? And we see it in every industry. I mean, watch the game tonight. If the Lakers don't win, you watch how those Laker players are going to look. If the Warriors don't win tomorrow night, right? You watch that. So hope is important, right? Resiliency is important, and connecting to people and let them know we're going to make it through this, right? And just like the backbone of the Black community has always been our women, right? They've been there for their community. They care for their community. And I think it's okay that we educate others and let them know this is what we believe in. This is who we are. Because we hear it every year when someone runs for president or something. They talk about their families that came here from Europe and other parts of the world, right? And they tell those heartfelt stories. We have very heartfelt stories too that we need to share, that breeds hope, and that hope leads to opportunity for people. And we get involved in the workplace, in the working environment, because as American citizens, right, that's what that is. That's important to each and every one of us. And we don't be as dependent on systems as much as we're more reliant on each other and taking advantage of these wonderful opportunities that are there.
Well, thank you for that. Kendra, let me turn to you really quick. And, the risk is often where transformation begins. So what risk are you seeing foundations willing to take right now, and how that boldness fosters innovation and liberation within Black organizations? How do you see that? If you've been able to attend any conferences or been on calls, seeing what's going on in the world of philanthropy.
Well, I will say there are some. I was actually in DC a few weeks ago at the Just Economy Conference, which is a really big conference, national conference that really focuses on financing, and it's a mostly folks that are in community reinvestment. And so a lot of what is coming out, even in philanthropy, is just, is coming from the local level. Just yesterday, I want to say the president of the San Francisco Foundation issued a statement, and some dollars really focus on resiliency for some of their partners and others in the area. And I think it is probably a lot of it is due to listening. So I would say first and foremost, if you have not approached your philanthropic foundations or organizations, you should. Accountability, even more so. There's a lot of money that goes around, and I think at times, that's why the collective is so good. Is it's getting the data, it's giving people some strategy. So I think it's really important that folks, when you go to philanthropy, know what you want. Oftentimes we go, we meet, we have a meeting to sit and talk and introduce yourself. We talk about the woes and the what, and then you have one shot. And so use it. Go and convene with your community folks, whoever you're working with. Ask somebody for advice before you go, and ask for what you want. And so I think that's really important. Philanthropy is responding to what people are saying, but there's also philanthropy on the state and federal level. I know Cal Nonprofits is actually really engaged in doing work around protection. They're really watching. There's conversations, of course, with the AG, as it relates to just protecting nonprofits. I think here in California, we need to know what, I would say also what's really important, because we have, the C3s. Some folks have C4s. C4s are different. So, something to maybe even think about. But I think it's also knowing what the rules are. I think with this administration, with bullies and fascism and racists, they're bullies. So they say anything. Using again Harvard is an example. Harvard was like, well, first of all, we're Harvard. We've been around, before there was a United States. But second of all, we don't have to take what you're giving. And so I think with some of philanthropy, they're trying to figure that out because the philanthropy is, it wasn't designed for us. It was designed for tax breaks. If you know the history of the IRS tax code, it was because, very wealthy people, the robber barons of the 20th century, didn't want to pay taxes. And so they created ways, for charity to pass through dollars. And so much of our philanthropy is really tied to that, those old long dollars and some of this new money. So I think it is asking for what you want and what's important and really accountability, because it goes to kind of what Dr. Little was saying is, with the DEI, or in what you said, Regina, it's baked in. So like, if the philanthropic organization was committed in the first place, it shouldn't be that difficult. And so I think folks are just really, my observation, what I've seen and what I know Chet and Kying are reporting to us, they're gathering, they're trying to figure out, but it is, some are coming out more and as they're seeing these lawsuits, and things aren't sticking. And I think you'll probably see more and more going forward that'll just, be, to go back to the work they're doing. And I think, we as a community in California have to ask, ask Sierra Health where we stand. We can tell you. And so if they haven't made a statement, I'd make sure I'd ask them.
Well, thank you
Good
for
point.
that. Yeah,
Mhm.
you gotta ask. Closed mouths don't get fed, right? This is
Not
all
at
like a
all.
reminder. All of this is a reminder. I hope you guys on the line are taking notes here. Dr. Little, given the rise in scrutiny and polarization of DEI, how can organizations like build upon what Kendra's saying, but how can organizations build cross-sector alliances across businesses, philanthropy, and community that defend the core values of equity and justice while also future-proofing their work against political backlash?
Thank you, Regina. And I think it really goes back to everything we've all been saying. It's relational. This work is relational, but it also requires intentionality and strategy. And so we have to identify who we should be in partnership and hold those people accountable, as Kendra just said, but also vet them. We can't just run out and be happy because someone is dangling a check, because they may not be aligned, but it's more about their tax break than really the work that's being done. So yes, it's going to be challenging to say no to some people, because if they're not in alignment, I don't care if it's right now or 10 years later, it's going to be a conflict. And that's the necessity for us not only fostering relationships, but sustaining relationships. Sometimes we think, oh, well, it's election year. Let me go to the churches. Let me go to the community. But then they don't see you for 4 more years because you don't quote unquote need them. So it's not authentic. And so what we need to be careful of, born and raised in Compton, I am, is a spirit of escapism. Right? So like, hey, I got out, you all do this, or if I'm coming, it's sometimes that spirit of let me help those, but it's not us collectively. We are not a monolith as a Black community. And we have to value one another before anybody else can value us. And so when we are in relationship, that means we are in conversation. And as we're in conversation, that's how we articulate and devise our strategy. Because at the end of the day, whether we are in the same community, same city, we need each other. We don't have time for colorism. We don't have time for classism. We don't have time for any of these ways in which people try to divide us. And so as we move forward, yes, we need philanthropy. Of course we do. Of course we need community, the churches. And so we have to identify, we have to be in relationship, and we have to sustain that, and we have to educate ourselves, because not everyone is going to know. As Kendra said, they may not know what they need to ask for. But that's when somebody in our legacy of history comes and says, here's how you go and approach this foundation. Here is the buffer that you need to be most effective. But if we're all isolated, we're falling for the okie doke. So we have to remain in relationship. We have to be honest. Conflict is natural to human endeavors. So as Holly said, when you're in relationship, if you never had an argument, something's wrong. So we have to make sure we don't let small things drive us apart from each other. And this time is really causing us to not start something new, but to go back to our historical legacy of working together. As I mentioned, Ida B. Wells Barnett, she had money. She didn't have to go back into the organizations. She could have been right there in her community, but she chose to do that. And she went because she could enter some spaces other people couldn't. And then what do? We rally and we say, go, Holly, go, Madam Mayor. We don't need to be in conflict or competition, right? Because we know that if we have a collective strategy, it's going to come together and the outcomes will serve us as a whole.
You know, I didn't say this to you earlier, but you know that that's my shero of Ida B. Wells. So I always say oftentimes the people must know before they can act, and there's no educator like the press. So since it works within my space, I just said, let me go ahead and give her a shout out about that.
That's what my dissertation was about the Black women who fought for anti-lynching legislation. And we know it was not passed until the early 20s by Senator Kamala Harris and Senator Cory Booker. And that's the one thing, we have to know our history, because people will tell you you haven't done anything, but we know better.
Well, right. And I think that's what I love about even the way our media is. And if you look at Black media, what we should be doing is making sure that we are documenting that history, because that's the one thing you can't get rid of, right? So it doesn't matter what anybody says, that becomes a written history for us, and it helps to tell the story, and it helps actually to plant the seed. Today it would plant the seed if you understood the data, and we write about the data, we document that data. That helps foundations and others do what they need to do to ensure that our organizations get what they need. So Holly, turning to you, you've spoken about the importance of advocacy, but let's go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
What proactive strategies can organizations adopt to future-proof their missions and maintaining funding sustainability even in the face of this uncertainty?
So this has been such a fun panel to be on. I mean, we did not practice this, but this has been like a seamless connection of conversations. So we started out with understanding the importance of information and understanding that we needed to be working together. We moved into this idea of relationship and how we are supporting each other and how we are our own solution. And so I'm going to round out this equation with vision and storytelling, which I'm picking up right where you and Dr. Little left off. The very intentional thing, and this is so true for organizations. As organizers and as people who run organizations, we can get so caught up in our information. We can also get caught up in the schmooze that we forget to remind our partners, which are philanthropy partners, our community partners, the people whom we are seeking to serve. We forget to tell them how it all fits together. What is the story behind it all? What is the big, not just the impact, because those are the words of the institutions, but what is it for you? What am I going to do? How does this help you move something forward? And this language of survival, even in this moment where we are so threatened, is dead. Nobody wants to just survive. That's not attractive to nobody. People want to know that they can not only survive, but thrive. Survival feels minimalist. And I don't know if y'all have looked around, but we are living in a maximalist culture. So the last thing anybody wants to hear is about how they can do the minimum. And we as institutions have to play into that bigger dream. I mean, I think I think back, you guys have quoted so many great people, and I'm in the process of putting together, believe it or not, a coloring book of inspirational quotes of living leaders, because we forget that we have inspiration right here where we seek, and we are the current visionaries. And so I think the thing that I think organizations forget is that part of what we look to organizations for is vision and leadership. And we have got to not just allow folks to subsume that narrative. That's not just for the inspiration, Pastor. That is because also it is the way we inoculate our community against mis and disinformation. When they understand that they are great and they know that in their bones, and they know that this is what greatness looks like, and that they have institutions and community behind them to ensure that they get to greatness, then the people who come around and tell them that they are less than have no pathway to them. When you hear young people sometimes recounting that nothing was done, that they didn't do nothing for me, that this had no impact on their lives, that's our failure for not explaining to them how the vision works. And the vision doesn't work because somebody gave it to you. The vision works because we have all worked together to move ahead. And as you said, Dr. Little, we have not only known our history, we are tracking our history so that we see that we have trod a path and that we are headed for the mountaintop. So, that's where we need to be more intentional. And I promise you, and I may be speaking out of turn, Kendra, you tell me if I'm wrong, but even from a foundation point, they want to support something big. They have partners because they're looking to create positive change. And sadly enough, we sometimes get caught up in the supremacy culture of only information, or of only relationship, or of information and relationship, and we forget that our primary job is hope.
That's right.
I rarely come out of character to do that, but I just had to go ahead and snap for you.
I've been snapping the whole time, so I'm sorry I was out of character.
No, you can. I'm like the moderator. I shouldn't be doing that. But I have this entire conversation has, like I said, it has made me feel like there's a calm during the storm. And so, with that, I'll turn to Pastor Langford, because I'm sure will be words of wisdom there as well. And helping us understand, branding, and understanding branding is more than logos. It's about how communities perceive your value in an evolving climate. How can nonprofits reimagine their brand and public posture to remain relevant, trusted, and impactful?
Oh, thank you. I want to say, and to the nonprofits, sometimes I get excited when I speak. So, but I certainly do want to remind you the importance. How do you brand your organization? I have been fortunate to work with two phenomenal women. Three. My mother. The other one was Bishop Ernestine Cleveland Reams of Center of Hope Community Church. I started my nonprofit and community work under her leadership 30 plus years ago. And 4 years ago, I started working with Gay Cobb. And I'm telling you, these Black women are leaders in their own rights. They can stand shoulder to shoulder with any man, and they love their sisterhood. But what I've learned, and even in my work, is that you have to be visible. You can't be invisible. You might have the prettiest logo, but the people don't know the logo, they know you. Are you touchable? Are you reachable? Are you accessible? Are you nice? Right? I mean, let's be real. If you want people to support your work and give to your work, they're giving to you. You're the person that's branding the organization. Do you take time to go visit groups? Do you take time to go visit churches? Do you take time to go, even if your name is not called? I have been in many, many places and my name was never called. But if you keep being visible, they're going to call your name. But when they call your name, have you done the work in a way that people can respect who you are and what you do? That means you got to be a good listener, right? When you receive funding, you got to have a strong infrastructure. That means you can't hire your friends or your buddies. You got to hire the right, competent, qualified people to manage your finances. With any successful Black organization, they go straight to the finance department. So you got to hire the right people to manage to manage the funding. You have to then go to take all the classes you can to educate yourself. When I started running nonprofits, I was a social worker and a preacher, and the money management was Sunday school department, right? But through working with my dear friend Chet and others, they sent me to CEO classes in other places, right? And I learned that they knew I needed some training in that area. And I'm thankful that they did, right? Because it allowed me to evolve and be where I am today. So you have to be a good listener. You can't be that so prideful that no one can refer you to somewhere. Someone may like you, and they want to help you, but they got to make sure if we're going to bring millions of dollars to you, you got to be able to manage that money. Because, let's look at our families. Our families won't give us a lot of money because they're like, well, no, you're not going to manage that money. You're just going to go and spend it. So some families don't give it, right? But if you put the infrastructure together, then the money will come. But the money always follows the work, right? So you have to make yourself available, accessible. You got to listen to people. Sometimes it may not be your season, but are you willing to work with another organization to help their season become successful? At the Oakland Private Industry Council, that's who we are. That's what we do. We have worked with other organizations until this day. That's what we do. And guess what? Sometimes we don't get, the credibility. We don't get the funding. But guess what? The funding always comes to us. We always receive a call, right? Because why? We've been doing the work. And then you want to make sure that you're collecting the data and the information, and you learn how to interpret or share that, sharing the stories. And you can see every day nonprofits are evolving and doing well in America because why? People are sharing that essential information. And you know what? You may have made a lot of mistakes. Guess what? Everybody makes a lot of mistakes. I'm going to share one quick story with you all on that. We had this great convention, and this pastor was married for 55 years. And he said, my wife and I have not had any arguments in 55 years. Not one argument in 55 years. And that place had 30,000 people, and it was quiet. He said, because we had many. And I'm telling you, as a nonprofit, you're going to have a lot of challenges, make a lot of mistakes, but that's why we have organizations and systems and groups out there to help you to perfect so you can do the great work that you are called to do.
Well, that's great. Well, I've enjoyed spending this hour with you all, and it has been my pleasure to hear and lead and be able to moderate this conversation. But I want to close us with one question that might be on everybody's mind. Are we going to make it through? And from your heart and your experience, what insights or solutions, perhaps ones you haven't discussed yet, can help Black-led nonprofits and small businesses weather the storm and come out stronger on the other side? And so anything that you have not shared would take about 1 minute each of you just to give maybe just a wrap up to that. Are we going to make it through? And Kendra, I'll start with you because you're in my box first.
I say yes. We are going to make it through. We have to reimagine. We've done it before. What I talk about often in this space is, in 1865, after slavery, we had 10 years of Reconstruction. And in that 10 years, they brought in their, Andrew Jackson, which is, not different from the current, ushered in 100 years of Jim Crow, and we made it through that, realizing every decade, people think it started in 1865, but it started in every single decade. It's not easy, because this country is not easy. And because of, I would say, so much of the progress and the coalition building that has happened over the last 25 years, it's been a threat. And so, I think the time that we've taken to kind of take some steps back after this election, but where we are, people have always been in, ready to go. I think we have to look at things. We have to reimagine. We definitely have to look at how we raise money, how we, that I would say, the imagination of how we can thrive, not just survive it, but thrive in this. And I will say this to you, Regina. I was on a panel, probably the first one since all of this, and one of the things that I think we should really talk about more is, folks were saying that we need the Black media more than ever. And I think that is really true. And I think, we have put our Black media to the side. And now is there ever a time for us to utilize and so you're not having to be so codependent on ads and dollars that we can't say what we need to say. So I think there's in these moments we need to go back to the basics. But I think we will as a country, and I think in California, we really have to reimagine ourselves in Black California in ways that I don't think we've seen ourselves in a long time. And in this challenging moment, this is the time for us to do it.
All right. Well said. Holly.
I was at an event a week ago or so with Ayanna Van Zandt, and she shared a parable, which I'm not going to share, but I'm going to tell you the punchline. She said that Black people are stars, and stars shine brightest in darkness. And so I remind people, especially our people, are we going to get through this? Yeah, that's not even a question. Why? Because as a people, we've been through so much worse than this. We are in our thrive era, and the only people who don't know it is us. They would not be coming after us the way they're coming after us. We would not have to have a tracker that tracks all the ways this administration wants to come after us. We would not have to have these relationships and conversations with funders if they too weren't being threatened, not because they're not doing good work, but because they are part of our support system. So we now need to recognize for ourselves how powerful we are. Darkness is where we shine the brightest. So we are absolutely going to survive and thrive.
All right. Dr. Langford?
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Holliday. I like that one. Yes, we're going to survive. Someone said this too shall pass. And people have, when you get in a position of power, you got to be careful how you treat God's people, because we're all God's people, and Black people are God's people too. And so this is going to pass, but there's certain practices and certain principles we must apply. And as we do that, we'll see that the benefits will come your organization's way.
And last but not least, Dr. Little, a word from you.
Yes, it's so important. We for sure are going to not, as Sister Holly and everyone else says, we're not just surviving, we are thriving. And one of the things that we have to remember is that the more we tell our stories, that's where we hear our strength. Oftentimes, especially with young people, we want them to see the success, but we forget about telling them the journey. When we didn't get the best grades or when we got in trouble. And so there is no framework for how we've developed excellence. And I'll end as the pastor, and I'm going to end on a couple of scriptures. Iron sharpens iron. And so we know what that means and how we have to work together. There's another scripture that says they are overcome by their testimony. So we have to share even when it's challenging. As Sister Holly said, in the darkest of times, we can't fall for, oh, I'm going to keep this to myself. No, you have to help people understand how they will not only make it through, but be stronger beyond that. And then in Exodus, it says, the Egyptians you see today, you'll see no more. So even when we've had assaults, we have come through victorious. And that's what we have to remind ourselves, but we can't do it individually. We have to continue to be together. As Sister Holly said, we in relationship. So we have to remind ourselves on the daily who we are, whose we are, and why we're here. Thank you again so much.
Thank you, guys. This was so touching and actually just so needed at the beginning of the week for me. You just don't even know. I want to thank you all for your wisdom, your candor, your clarity. This isn't just a conversation, it's a call to action. Let's continue to work together. Now I'll turn it back over to Karina to guide us to the next part of our gathering. Thank you all. You're on mute, Karina, still.
Thank you. And I was just running my mouth. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Regina. Beautifully moderated. Thank you to all of our panel. We are going to just have just a few, just maybe one or two questions. I know we are running just behind just a little bit, nothing urgent, but I wanted to read this question, one of them that came up into the chat. And just to preface it a little bit, her question a little bit, or their question, right now, many Black-led organizations are being asked to do more with less. The weight of financial constraints is forcing hard decisions, particularly around staffing and operations. These cuts, though necessary, are painful and deeply felt across our teams and communities. In light of this, I'm wondering, have there been any innovative strategies or models to help furloughed or laid off nonprofits staff transition into new roles quickly and with dignity? They are looking for approaches that not only preserve talent, but also reinforce commitment to equity and sustainability. And I will leave that open to whomever wants to answer that question.
Well, I'll start. This is the work that I actually do in my professional life. I work with a lot of organizations that also hire seasonally. And dignity is about recognizing and being transparent so that people have the right to create their choices, and giving and providing resources, or at least identifying resources for them to have so that those choices have some guidance attached to it. I will tell you, one of the things that I love is what we have seen some of our congressional members do across the country, and some of our governors meeting with congressional leaders to host job fairs, to match people up with career counselors who may be impacted by the cuts to funding. I think, again, it's about pulling some of these resources that exist in the community, even sharing, what opportunities and services are available in state government. What opportunities and vacancies do we have in city and county government? We may be experiencing an opportunity to have a growth of talent in the talent pool that has frankly been a little anemic. And we have an opportunity to kind of really move people from a space of despair to a space where they are now empowering their communities and serving in a different way. We haven't had that. So I think just as we kind of were ending our discussion, thinking about how we help each other, but also recognizing that there are other opportunities out there, and we may be the source of them.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to answer that question? No? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Holly. Okay, another question we have here. what are the most critical services currently at risk due to funding cuts, and how can we prioritize their preservation?
I'll take a stab at that one. It's complicated. So for, what I think would be important for the nonprofits that are listening and may get information is for at a state level. Because I mean, I think as nonprofits, you have to look at it local dollars, state dollars, federal dollars. So the federal dollars, it's all over the place. And because of, these executive orders, they're clawing back money, that's going to be helter skelter. So just know that no one's going to have really a strong answer for it until if it ever settles down. For the state of California, I would say what's important to look for is the May revise is coming up, and that is going to determine a lot. And so that is where you really need to understand how our budget policy, I believe Collective has done some work on that, but how our budget works and what that because there's going to be a lot of changes. And I would say the other big thing that to watch out, because California will have a gap if in fact this happens, is with the Medicare. And that's a whole nother conversation. We can't fill the gap, and that affects, everyone, small businesses, nonprofit, I mean, everyone. So, it's right now, just get as much information as you really can. And then, I think, maybe opportunities to do some co-op works, leverage resources, share resources locally. It's time to get along and figure out other ways. And then at the local level, because local dollars are, what sales taxes and so on and so forth, property taxes is really, that's where you're going to have to really get strong and hold on and go for your dollars and really pay attention to those budgets as well. And because many organizations probably get most of their money from direct services at that local level. And so, you're going to have to really, I think, we'll have to figure out a way, maybe this is something philanthropy can do to help, is, start having conversations about how to mitigate some of it, and then how to hold on, because I think the game that's being played is to ensure that, there's money there. They just don't want us to get access to it. And so, with state public dollars, if you don't use it, you lose it. So it's really, really, really paying attention. We have a group we're working with called Next Gen. I don't know if anyone's familiar. They have a budget guy on there who is just a beast. And so he's actually helping us through with my initiative, is to watch the dollars at the state to see what agencies, what's happening. And then regionally for many of our partners is to kind of give an idea of what is happening in real time. And so maybe that, something we can look at, from statewide, is like really monitoring that. And I would say, if you can invest in anything, it's going to be your social media and just ways that you're going to be able to receive information, because things just are moving. They're just going to move faster than many of our nonprofits have. Social media people, marketing people, we're going to have some conversations about that because of the way information is coming, and to ensure you get the truth, which is why I said I think Black media is going to be really important right now.
Thank you, Kendra. Pastor Langford, were you making a comment?
No, I said beautiful. That's some really great information. Thank you, Kendra. And you too, Holly.
And just one more question to wrap up, just going a little deeper into the funding models. The question is, are there collaborative funding models that have worked for you or partner organizations in the face of shrinking federal support?
I'll jump in. I'm sorry.
Yeah, please do.
I was going to say that similar to what Kendra was just talking about, this is where we have to be in relationship and not be duplicative, because a lot of times as nonprofits, we are serving similar or the same populations, and we're often doing similar or the same work. And so what we want to do is, obviously you want to vet the nonprofits, make sure they're accountable and have, their systems in place or open to new knowledge and learning. But then after that, figure out what really is our strength, right? And can we pass over maybe this work to this other nonprofit where that's their core strength and we work collaboratively together? Because if you are serving those same communities, then you guys can not only really have a broader impact, but this is where the data collection comes in, because you're not taking on the whole of trying to operate, doing the work, monitoring the money, and documenting what's happening, because that has been a historical game as well, where we're doing outstanding work, but it's a measure of, okay, where can you demonstrate this? How can you quantify this? How many people are you impacting? And we have to even change that narrative, because impact for certain audiences looks very different, right, in our communities. And so I just think collaborations, co-oping, and really being thoughtful about scope of work and places that we don't have to duplicate.
Dr. Little, you and I are sharing a brain and great ideas together. I would, if you don't mind, Karina, I'd like to just add a little bit of something to that. And it is that what we are seeing is that it's actually more beneficial to go bigger, not smaller. We have got to get out of the small mindset and move into the mindset of abundance. And so taking the strategy that Dr. Little just laid out around collaboration, think about how you can, instead of looking at a neighborhood, how do you look at a city? How do you build collaborative and put together teaming partners with other organizations or perhaps public-private situations where you all have the ability to go after bigger things? And particularly if you're interested in staying in the funding mechanism, here's the trend that we are seeing in business, in terms of relationship with the governor and government, is that they want to write bigger checks, not smaller checks. Why? Because bigger checks are better for billionaires, but we can be bigger if we work collaboratively. So if we can figure out ways to be bigger, then we can then be competitive with those bigger institutions. They're not trying to get rid of funding. They're trying to weaken the marginalized communities so that they are no longer competition for the bigger institutions. And furthermore, that the folks who share ideology that does not align with them, who happen to be helping marginalized communities, are no longer competitive. So I just want to double down and just share a little bit of that to say, this is the time for us to grow and expand, even though I know that some of you all may be feeling like it's the time to shrink. And grow doesn't mean grow in the ways that you just expand your membership or inflate your budget. Grow means find those collaborative partners, create those teaming agreements, piece together how you can have a bigger impact by working collaboratively, and go after those larger grants. Forget those smaller grants, 100,000, whatever. They might come back at some point, but right now, you know what hasn't gone away? $1 million grants, multi-million-dollar grants. I happen to be an alumni of Howard University. One of the strategic things is that we just became a R1 research institution. You know what that enabled us to do? It enabled us to get $50 million grants as opposed to the $10 million grants that we were getting, because now we can play with the institutions that have the higher access to those larger dollars. And a lot of that happened. Why? Because we were partnering with other institutions to get there. So I brilliant, Dr. Little, and thank you for allowing me to kind of add some other things to it.
Right. I just want to add, thank you for that, Holly and Dr. Little. Leveraging your existing resources, because throughout and here in the Bay Area, in the city of Oakland, working with Alameda County, we have a lot of tax deferred properties, and those properties are being donated to nonprofits. And so we have brought together a lot of nonprofits, including churches, that are now looking at acquiring tax deferred properties for housing services. So you can leverage your nonprofit for a building or a house that can become a part of your service that you provide. In some cases, it's okay to downside so that you can grow, that you can connect. We were working with a very large bank, and we had millions of dollars sitting there in our training funds, and they weren't interested in us. And so a friend of mine called and he said, can you talk to my sister-in-law because she works for this bank and she wants to talk with nonprofits? And I spoke with his sister-in-law, and they were a wonderful bank. And they said, we would love to have y'all's money, and we have a foundation. We have property where y'all can have training programs for free. We'll give you tickets here, tickets there. And I'm telling you, she wooed us and we left them. Talking about relationship. So if a bank is not working with you, and people where you're spending a lot of money, look at other relationships, other opportunities to help you. And I just got the word today that this particular bank has just donated $25,000 to us for brand new computers for our career center. So that's what happens when we leverage and partner with others within our neighborhoods and in our communities. Because some of the larger banking industries are not as focused on certain communities, but others are, and they're certainly focused on you. And also talk to existing nonprofits that have been around a while. They can give you some information. They can share information, as well as they stated earlier, with the local foundations in your area. And don't be afraid to go back to them 2 or 3 times, because maybe it's the 4th or 5th time that they hear you and they realize how important it is for them to fund your work.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I do know that I just want to make sure that everyone knows that I did see your questions, and just due to time, I'm wondering if panelists, if I can just send you some questions and then we can get back to the attendees with those answers, just for the sake of time today, so that we can make sure that everyone is heard. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you to Dr. Sharani Little, Kendra Lewis, Holly Holiday, Pastor Raymond Langford, to Honorable-elect Mayor-elect Barbara Lee, and also to our moderator, Regina Wilson. Thank you all for joining today, and we appreciate your insight and storytelling to bring this conversation to life. Really thankful. So we are going to go ahead and move on to next steps. If I could have next slide, please. Okay, so we want to make sure that you all are staying in touch with us. We would like for you to share your journey, let you know that you are not alone in this, that we are here as a support, and as we have spoken about all throughout this discussion of being in a relationship, we all go together at this point. So just want to make sure that you guys take that message, if you don't take anything, that we are collective and we are here to support and navigate through this change. So you can do that by sharing any stories that you want to discuss. You can do that by posting a photo or video sharing and hashtagging Navigating Change. And there is our social media handle. It's the same handle for all of our platforms, at CA Black Women's Collective. Always want to be sure that you're a part of the conversation. There should be a way, if not, I'll be sure in the follow-up email that you all can be sure to stay connected with us so that you can be a part of our conversations. We do plan to have them quarterly about the topics that remain important to our community. So we do want you to always remain on the lookout for that information. Amplifying our legacy. Again, help us to collect stories about this issue and about different issues throughout That will also be included in the post email follow-up for you to be able to complete a survey and just sharing your story or one of a journey who that inspires you. And then continue to be the change, continue to advocate for authentic representation in media and society. You can support Conversations Initiative by volunteering or donating and partnering with us to uplift Black women in our community, their families everywhere. And then educate and empower. We're all about empowerment. It's in the name. Bring our educational outreach programs to your school or organizations or community. And next slide, please. And a huge, huge, huge thank you to all of you for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. Without you, we couldn't host this impactful event. Again, there will be some post reading that will go out along with the recording of this session. So feel free to spread the word and share with your community. Thank you also so very much for joining. And until next time, we'll see you soon.